make our plans, sure. But life is what happens to you along the way. You know, at first I didn't want this. I didn't want to connect. I didn't want to get involved. But she kept on at me, you know. This is what life is. This is why we're here, to connect, to build. We're here to build something.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Jewel Allah.
Peace, Jakil Naj Allah.
And I would like to thank all of you for joining us for another broadcast of the Knowledge Yourself radio show on this day, which we call Knowledge Wisdom. And each show is brought to you by globalpeacesolutions.net. Please contact them for those of you who are interested in pursuing a career in entertainment. You can reach them at global, that's GLOBAL, P as in Paul, SOLUTIONS.net. Also, we're sponsored by Sage Studios in Inglewood, California. You can contact Mr. Clark via email at thesagestudios.com. That's spelled SAGE Studios. And they're located on 1321 North La Brea Avenue. Hit them up. 310-674-1105. And of course, if you would like to follow us and what we're doing, check us out on knowledgeyourselfradio.weebly.com. So today's show is just dedicated to food, clothing, and shelter. And basically, we want to give you a different perspective on what that means in today's world. So let's begin with a quote by Confucius. It says, "Real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance." Why don't we pass that around and see what the doctors say about it?
Yeah, man, for me, it's just simply, it sounds like a humble statement or a humble quote, because I think, if you're humble, then you're able to not really hang your hat on what you know, but hang your hat on what you don't know, realizing that, you'll never know everything, so you'll remain a student and you'll, be in pursuit of knowledge until, you physically are no longer able to. So I think for me, I take humbleness out of that. Humbleness a word?
Sure.
Take humbleness out of that.
I think that qualifies as Scrabble.
Ask the English teacher, So, I take that out of it mostly.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, God. It's definitely dealing with humility. And I was actually having a conversation with my big brother about some things, and basically the gist of that was that the more that you learn, the more you realize the things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely can relate with this statement, because it's like once you figure out something else and you start thinking and you're like, oh, well, now there's all this other stuff that I don't know that I need to go learn so that I can understand this thing better. And once you understand that, you realize, well, now there's this whole other thing that you don't know anything about. And so it's like, the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything. So, it's definitely important, like the God was saying, to be humble. I'm saying, in your learning experience. So that's I think that's what I take away from this than anything. It's just the humility. No one person could ever get or know it all.
Yeah, one more thing I took out of it is that to know one's extent of their ignorance to me means knowing what to talk about. If you don't know something, keep your mouth shut. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Don't even speak on it. You know, and I
Right.
think that's significant with today being knowledge, wisdom. You know?
No doubt.
And that would include a person, places, or things.
Right.
You know, I think just as always, with one mind on this show, and if there's anything that we want to teach is that knowledge is unlimited. So that means that learning is unlimited. Aside from maybe some of our physical limitations, there's no limit to what a person can learn as long as they're, you know, living and breathing. So I think for the most part, that's what this show is all about, teaching you as much as we can, but more importantly, guiding you into a direction to where you'll do your own studies. And I think what's really important is just that we continue to be students. You know,
Right.
everyone wants to be a teacher in the room, but I think a true teacher is actually one of the best students, you know.
No doubt. I mean, when you look at knowledge, uh, part of the definition of knowledge is to experience something, right? And so, if you want to draw it up in like the martial arts realm, a lot of people have informations about blocks, punches, and kicks, right? But until you actually have to go block, punch, and kick, it's just information, right? Because you haven't experienced it yet. And then once you actually put that into practice, that's when you actually become knowledgeable of it, right? And then you try to perfect that knowledge, right? And that's you're doing it over again and over to try to repeat that process to clean it up. That's the wisdom of it, right? And then hopefully from that marriage of that knowledge and wisdom, you form some understanding.
Well put, God. So let's go into the goal of the show. It is to free the minds of our people from mental slavery and show that the things they do not know are the things enslaving them. So this will be a really simple show in terms of how much of the things that we're going to discuss today are actually at your disposal. How to save money in terms of, you know, recycling, and a variety of other things, growing your own produce, and basically how you can tighten up some ends in your household if you're struggling financially, and, you know, just the practical approach to all of those things. So before we get into the show, let's begin with the current events. I would like to pass it over to the God Jerul, and we're just going to run it on down the line. Peace, brother.
Peace. The first event that I came across comes from Scientific American. And the headline is "Scientists Successfully Model a Living Cell with Software." In creating this first complete computer model of an entire single-celled organism, biologists are forging a powerful new kind of tool for illuminating how life works. So, you know, when you just look at it on face value, you're like, wow, this is a great
Right.
thing that they've been able to discover. But instantly for me, it's like, how are they going to use these types of things,
Exactly.
you know,
Implementation.
to really push any kind of agenda that they have, whether it be, you know, making sure that they grow their race, for lack of a better term,
Right.
or how can they use it to, you know, put us in more of constraint and things of that nature. So, you know, that's just me thinking.
Yeah, nah,
You
what
know.
came to mind for me was the movie The Lorax. How everything, I don't know if y'all ever seen that, but in the movie The Lorax, everything is fake, right? And so initially when he was like, oh, they can kind of make that kind of thing happen, I was like, oh, here we go.
Right. Also, you know, with things like this, now you could see how certain, you know, viruses react in certain circumstances and how those will
Right.
affect certain people and things of that nature. So I think it, although on face value it could be a great thing, you know, they could use it to maybe see how they could, you know, successfully do away with some diseases without having to actually experiment on people or animals, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the reason why I chuckled is because, you know, this is the God speaking, so we're always going to hear the positive spin of any type of discovery that scientists make. But, you know, like he mentioned earlier, the Frankenstein aspect of it is always the threat. I mean, we know historically speaking that anytime we make I shouldn't say we, anytime they make some great discovery about the science of life, it turns into a Frankenstein experiment,
Yeah.
and then next thing you know, we're saying, "Wow, we wish you would have never discovered that."
Right.
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 Especially
Exactly.
with, that's funny you mentioned that. I think the Frankenstein movie comes out this month. Right.
Oh,
Is that right? That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. That's
Good
true.
timing. Good timing.
That's good.
So check that out on Scientific American. It's a really good article. I want to pass it over to Jaquil. Is going to hit you with another current event. Warm and
Yeah.
cold currents here. Peace, brother.
Peace. So I actually got a kind of more a techie event. Pardon me. This is dealing with Industry Week, and Chevrolet is rolling out or plans to roll out cars that are connected with 4G internet services. So now passengers, not people driving, will be able to use tablets and phones and things like that in the car while traveling. So again, I think that's one of those things where on face value is definitely a great thing. At the same time, I think it was Jewel earlier last year who dropped that current event. How what was it? The using your cell phone in your car fries your baby's brain.
It does.
Right? And so you got to think about when you are introducing these technologies and having them all around your children who are not yet developed enough to fight off those kind of things the same way that adult humans are, right? What's the implications of that and the health risks that follow that thing? And they're doing that study right now on you,
Right.
right? And that's what they're figuring out.
Because everything is purely experimental.
Exactly.
And 10 years from now, even though there are a ton of news reports out there and studies that have shown the detrimental effect of cell phones on the brain and on the body in general, people are still continuing to do these things.
Right.
And we did a show on that as well.
Indeed.
Definitely check out one of our shows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the guy said it. You can correlate if you're into like medical stuff, right? You can look at hip replacements and how that's gone up in the last 10, 15 years, right? As a direct correlation to the use of cell phones. Brain tumors, same thing, has gone up as a direct correlation in the use of cell phones.
Yeah.
Putting them on their heads and putting them on their hips.
Not to mention, like we built on last show and various other shows, the sperm count of males has dropped, dramatically,
Right.
as well as testosterone. So there's a correlation between cell phones and technology to all of these things. You got to think when you're in a car, you're in a confined space, so you're really in a microwave.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You make a phone call with your windows down, windows up.
Uh-huh.
You're basically frying yourself just like you would in a microwave.
Right. And just a reminder, when you feel that heat on your ear and on your face, that's a clear indication that you're microwaving your brain. So just keep that in mind. Thank you for that, God. The first, according to CNN, January the 9th, 2014, they found had the first H5N1 avian flu death in North America. This was noted by Canadian health officials. So the H5N1 is also known as the bird flu. And in essence, it says that no H5N1 viruses have been found in the United States, and there have been, since this virus kind of came on the scene, they've destroyed quite a few birds around the world. So
because pigs and birds always have sex together and stuff, right? I guess that's how
right.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of interesting,
Makes
right?
sense.
Pretty suspect there. So, when we're talking about prevention, I know one of the things that is said is that the person who contracted this disease, he actually visited China. But really, it's all associated with your contact with poultry. To break it down, as far as the avian influenza, I'm gonna let y'all add on.
Yeah, me too. I really
It says that also called avian flu or bird flu. This is what the article is saying. Is an illness that usually affects only birds. A new strain jumped to baby seals in 2011. While there have been deaths from certain strains of avian flu, person-to-person infections are rare. The official name for the most commonly seen and most deadly form of the virus is called influenza A H5N1 or the H5N1 virus. So I want to let y'all go in on that.
Man, so when that first popped off, first of all, I was in Mexico when that whole thing first popped off, hanging out in the corner of Tijuana eating tacos. Okay, and I continued to go for like months because we have a clinic down there. So I went like every week, sometimes twice a week, to Mexico where the whole H1 flu thing was going down and all that craziness, and there was nothing. The scariest thing that I saw were the police with masks on running around with the M16s in the back of trucks. That was it. But so the interesting thing about that though is what happened is after they dropped that, the very next day, America made I don't know how many millions of dollars selling vaccines of H1N1. So you have to ask yourself, how did you develop a vaccine for something that just recently came out? Like literally, it came out today. Tomorrow, you have a vaccine for it. It's not possible,
Right.
right? And so they're selling them old vaccines, so it doesn't work. The other thing you got to think about is birds and pigs don't normally mix, right?
Right.
Where are these things coming from? Who's creating these things and introducing them to the populace like that, right? You gave a great link, I think, for it is in poultry. We know that it's been like on MSNBC and CNN. They've been talking about how we're in a post, and we cover that too on the show. How we're in a post antibiotic state right now, a post antibiotic world, meaning that the antibiotics that we have for colds and flus and different bacteria and viruses are not working anymore because they've adapted and changed to that. Yeah, so now when you're injecting these chickens, and a good documentary on that is, what's that one on, is it Forks Over Knives, where they show you how they stack the chickens on cages on top of themselves, and if the fans turned off for 3 seconds, everything in the room would die. So they pump them with all these hormones and stuff, right? Which are not working. So, yeah, that's definitely an easy way to contract it. That way, is you get some weird strain of flu or something that gets into your chicken meat and you ingest it, and there you go.
Right, and I mean, just like my brother said, there are a ton of medical journals, articles from what some consider reputable news agencies that have addressed this. I know CNN, again, at the forefront, they have really great articles about how antibiotics being pumped in food has affected just treatment for influenza and anything related to illnesses caused by certain strands of bacteria.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we haven't even been on the air a year yet, and this is actually the second time that we've mentioned this. And again, go back into some of our old shows, our health shows, where we do address that issue. Always on the cutting edge.
To add on,
please.
First of all, if y'all have seen the movie Contagion,
haven't seen it.
Is that when they locked them down in the building and they don't let them out?
It's basically pig flu that manifests itself in China.
Really?
Yeah, it becomes something that is killing people all over the world, and it's about like Matt Damon has to go find a cure and all of that. But it's just interesting that it was China, and then it had to deal with pigs and birds. So, but the things that's most interesting to me was there's a Scientific American. As soon as you started building about that, it brought me to a thought that I had as it relates to an article I read some months back from Scientific American, where the headline is "Fear Grows Over Lab-Bred Avian Flu Virus."
Wow.
So they're not even, hiding that they do, play with this stuff in the lab, and they're able to, basically the headlines talks about scientists call for stricter biosafety measures for dangerous avian influenza variants. So they're experimenting with these things, experimenting with the high explosives in the laboratory, and who's to say that if they're experimenting with the laboratory, what are they going to do with them? Is it just to experiment with them, or are they going
Right.
to utilize it in some fashion?
Right, right.
You
And no, so I was at my mechanics,
Mhm.
and I randomly go off on tangents about all kind of things, and
No, really?
and I just happened to be one of those tangents happened to be medical stuff, and I was telling people I was like, man, all this stuff is created in the lab, da 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 da, and there was this dude just kind of sitting down, just he was listening right attentively, but he's not really saying anything, but he's like nodding in agreement, and I'm like. Yeah, da da da, and he's nodding, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, da da da, and then he's like, come here, man. Like, how do you know all that stuff? And I was like, well, I look at some papers, read some things, ask some questions. And he shows me some paperwork. He goes, you know what that's for? I was like, nah, what's that about? He goes, that's special clearance. And I was like, okay, well, like, what are you, some FBI dude? Like, should I punch you in the throat and run away right now? What's going on? And he's like, and so he goes, I can't tell you exactly where I work or what I do, but there's a lab out in Chatsworth, San Fernando Valley. And in this lab, we are making hepatitis, a new strain of hepatitis. Because I was talking about something with hepatitis, da da da, and then he kind of chuckled, and that's what kind of started the whole conversation between me and him. And yeah, so he basically confirmed it. He was like, "Yeah, man, we designed these things." And he goes, "Now, how does it get out? I don't know."
Mhm.
He goes, "But yeah, there's a certain part, and we do have a place in that."
And also, I remember when you shared that on that particular show where we were talking about the antibiotics and things of that nature. So there was a lot of harm going on in science. And again, I keep reminding all of you to watch our old shows. We did do a show about AIDS, and one of the things that came out of that show was the idea that there were a group of scientists in Central Africa who were experimenting with, you know, high explosives, which resulted in a virus. And of course, certain members of the science community are going to keep that quiet. The government, of course, they're going to keep that quiet. However, there are always some truth sayers out there who are going to reveal that information to you. And we're encouraging you to all look into these types of things and see the truth value in them. When people, scientists in particular, when they say they're making viruses and things of that nature, what good is that?
Right, and you got to think if they're making something, they're probably going to use it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like they fund millions of dollars into these things for them to just experiment with it and then put it away.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then I was just reading this article where they were talking about they have hundreds, maybe thousands of cures just sitting on a shelf, but don't get funded for testing.
Right.
But then you have stuff like this that gets out of the league. You know what I mean? Or we have all this money to go to war, but how come we can't slide a little bit of that to fund? Research that's actually going to be beneficial for the people.
Yeah, biggest thing is obviously a lot of this information can be heavy on one's brain, but if you keep your immune system at the level that you need to keep it at, try to limit the toxicity in your body and things of that nature like we built on the last show, you'll be able to deal with a lot of the issues that arise.
Sure.
You may get the flu, but it won't be as taxing on your body. You'll be able to bounce back like this God did.
I was gonna say that's my current event. That was one of them. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I was actually sick for I guess 2.5 days, and these two things right here and some vitamin C, a good ascorbic bioavailable form of vitamin C is really what pulled me through it.
I'm sorry, can you give the people the names of those
Yeah,
guys and where they can get them?
So this right here is what we make. It's an herbal blend. It's called Primal Aid. So this is definitely what you want to. You should also have some of this just sitting in your house for anything. It's good to go on vacation. It's safe to give to the kids. Right? It's all natural herb, right? So you can never take too much of it. I was eating it like it was candy. Every couple hours I'd wake up, grab some water, throw some down, go back to sleep, right? And this right here, balance, is like the guy was talking about. Not only do you need to keep your immune system strong, right? But you also need to balance out your body, and then how your body digests foods and processes that kind of stuff, right? Because there are some kind of toxics that build up from eating foods, right? But you have to be able to eliminate that out of the body properly, right? Or else that can also cause infections. It's called septic poisoning, right? Where you're not eliminating toxins from your body and just reabsorbs back into your body, right? So that can happen in the gut too. When you don't eliminate things properly through your gut, it just reabsorbs back into your stomach, and you end up getting yourself sick. So between these two things, like I said, some vitamin C, man, it just really knocked it out. So the guy's definitely right and exact. And I've said it before in the show. He said before, we all kind of talked about it. You're not going to really, and not in this day and age, unless you're on some remote island somewhere. And even then, that's kind of suspect. But you're not going to be able to eat perfect and live the perfect life, right? So you have to have things to help clean you up. Definitely win.
Right. True indeed. Thank you for that. Can you remind the people of where they can get those products?
Oh yes, we sell this at the office. My teacher actually formulated this. His name is Dr. Louis Yu. My big brother. I've known him since I was 15, so like almost the majority of my life. He studied under Dr. Alfred Libby, who is the reason why we take things sublingually under the tongue. So he was his understudy, and we're in the San Fernando Valley. You can reach us, call the office number 818-341. Yeah, I don't dial the number that often. I'll pull that up and give it to you guys. But yeah, definitely, you can shoot me an email, jakil187@gmail.com. I can shoot you that information. We'll take care of it.
Thank you, God. True indeed. Let's move it over to Jeru. Hit you with another current event.
Yeah, you mentioned truth sayers and with whistleblowers, right? So this
A
one,
lot of information here, y'all.
You mean
a
like
lot of
too
knowledge.
short? Blow the whistle.
not quite, but yeah, no.
This is kind of whistleblowing.
Right. This one comes from Huffington Post or HuffPost, .com. And the headline is UNC professor receiving death threats for revealing athletes' low reading levels.
Wow.
So you can see how big business
Wow.
football and sports are, at the collegiate level.
Death threats.
Death threats.
For revealing something that they can just go look up on their own.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this comes from a CNN report. In a CNN report this week, Mary Willingham said her research of 183 football or basketball players at UNC from 2004 to 2012 found 60% reading at 4th to 8th grade levels, and roughly 10% below 3rd grade level. She said she worked with one men's basketball player early in her tenure who couldn't read or write at all.
Right.
So,
Wow. How?
Yeah.
How do you get through school without being able to read or write?
You become a cash cow.
Right.
So if you can make a university millions of dollars,
Right.
it
But
doesn't
I'm
matter.
even thinking like there was preschool and kindergarten, first grade, and how you make it all the way through that.
But think about these kids nowadays, man. They're getting publicized in middle school.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
like, you got people saying, oh, he's the next LeBron. He's 11,
Right.
9, 10, 11 years old. So, if you have that type of talent and potential, and you're getting that much publicity at a young age, you'll get passed on.
Yeah.
You're going to
Right.
get passed on just because that's the nature of where we live now. So.
Right, and
So the teacher-
just the thing is, there are a couple of different angles, and both of you addressed them. How do you get through school without knowing how to read and write? The first thing is, on an elementary school level, the last thing you want to see as a teacher is students repeating not only the grade level you teach, but repeating your class, because then you're going to have a student you had for a full school year who may be in your class next year. Depends on the elementary school, because I know they change grade levels. So instead of having 30 students in your class, there's a possibility you'll have 40 students in your class. So what will you do as an elementary school teacher? You'll say, let's just pass this student on, right? Middle school, same thing. Let's just pass them on, because those middle school is extremely impacted with students. Then when you get to high school, by that time, if you don't know how to read and write, you're a discipline problem. No doubt about it. In most cases, they're discipline problems. So then what teachers do is they do something called social promotion. If you behave correctly in my class, they may not voice this to the student, but they say this to themselves, then I'll pass you through because your lesson is waiting for you outside of school. All right? Just to piggyback what you said and the fact that this involves college athletes, I remember Dexter Manley, a brother who played for the Washington Redskins, when he made it public that he was illiterate. So then on a college level, it becomes a thing, like the guy said, a cash cow. If you're a star athlete, you have two things going for you. You have money at your disposal. Of course, through scholarships, you can pay a nerd to do all your papers and do all your homework. I mean, no one's going to know. And then you may have some people on the inside, such as coaches, assistant coaches, who may have an interesting conversation with your professors.
Oh, no question.
Or the principal may have that conversation with the teachers.
Right. Well, I mean, now we're talking about the college level. So these coaches are very aware that if they lose a player, that'll knock them out of the top spot.
Right. And now you're losing your job
yeah,
now.
man, it's big money.
Yeah.
It's big money. So, really, I think it's all about money.
I mean, we did a show on this too, so go back and check that out. But it's just one of those things where you think about schools in Texas where football, is like the town actually shuts down for a game kind of thing. So, if there's a star athlete who, has the ability to play at the highest level,
everyone's going to kind of push.
Exactly. You got boosters, you got coaches, even the teachers probably feed into it to some degree. So they're like, oh, well, we got to make sure that this kid, can continue to move on and things like that. So
yeah, no doubt. I went to Alabama, earlier this year.
There you go. That's
man, the whole. I think everyone that I met was like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Are you Roll Tide or
Auburn, the other team? Yeah.
Immediately off the back, they're like, "Hey, how are you? Very nice, right?" But then immediately, so whose team are you on? Are you this team or this team? I'm like, "Whoa, you're a female nurse. You're like 62. What the hell do you know about football? You watch football?" And she'll just rattle off stats. I'm like, "Wow, you're like ESPN in the walking edition." Right? So it's definitely serious. So I can see like in a town like that, and I'm sure that's not the only place that's like that.
It's a religion. It's really a religion, man.
Yeah.
Tribalism
at its finest.
Man.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you for that. I mean, again, the show that the guy mentioned is sports modern day slavery.
Yeah.
So that's where we go in quite extensively about how athletic programs and professional athletic programs really are there to enslave our people when they decide to become professional athletes or college athletes.
Yeah, because as soon as a player of that caliber gets injured, you don't hear about him.
Right.
If he's not able to recover from the injury, you can think of millions of players who've been great in college, they get to the NFL or NBA, injure themselves, and you never hear about them again.
True indeed, because their goal is just to live in luxury. And you're expendable if you're an athlete.
Exactly.
Thank you for that, and I know it's more to follow. I want to pass it back over to Jaquil for another warm and cold current event.
Before we go there, I just want to add on one last thing. When people think to themselves, how could these athletes go broke if you can't read a contract,
man,
and you don't have the ability to comprehend the contract? That's how you go broke.
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Point well. And remember his background. He was a football player.
Yeah,
so
I've seen
and then he still is an athlete because he's a health fitness instructor. So just think about what the God is saying, and definitely, one of the things I don't think I got to tell. Maybe we mentioned it on that show is sports modern day slavery. But for those of you who need some sort of mentoring in terms of athletics, let's say you have a youth in your household, male or female, who's trying to go into some sort of athletics, this would be the guide you could email and get some guidance for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's a really sound-minded brother.
Mm-hmm.
If you want someone, your child who's going into martial arts, this would be another brother that, you know, you could email and ask for some guidance in terms of schools and lineage and history and what you need to look out for. So, true indeed. You know,
They have a lot of belts on the walls. No, I'm kidding.
you know, straight up. If one of your instructors is eating some hot Cheetos before they teach you, that may be a problem.
If his belly is rounder than his roundhouse, that's not a good look.
All right.
Yes, I have a current event. This one's actually coming from Infowars.com.
Woohoo!
Yeah, you know, and that's a good website, I think. It's got a lot of good information on it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is dealing with 80,000 Germans signed a petition against teaching sexual diversity in schools. So, you know, it's definitely been a hot topic here in America, definitely with the whole...
Hot topic. Makes me think about that store.
Yeah, right. And that store is kind of an interesting store anyway.
Interesting.
You know, with the whole, if you think that you're a female, you should be able to use female bathrooms, and allowing women or allowing men who have sex change to then fight or compete against women in women's sports. Which there is actually one transgender, I guess now a female fighter in the UFC. Not in the UFC, but, you know, doing ultimate fighting type MMA stuff. But so, you know, this is definitely an interesting article, and I think it's a great stance that they're taking, in the sense that their argument is that it should be based on biology and not social things, right? I take it a step farther, and I say that you really shouldn't be trying to sexualize kids at any age, you know what I mean? And maybe once they're like 16, 17, you want to introduce that to them. Okay, I'm with that, but you're talking about introducing, like I want to say in Wisconsin, they're talking about teaching anal sex to 3-year-old children. What the hell would you do that for? And those kids have no idea what that even is.
How about they spend more time teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic?
Exactly.
So that when they get to college, they can read at the level they should be reading at.
True indeed. Yeah. And I mean, it's just like you said, I mean, it's really premature to teach children about any type of sexual habits. I think really there has to be a really good conversation about gender. You know, and how are those things different, and how do men and women coexist? I mean, that's more of a healthier conversation, because children need to really know how they should relate to one another.
Yeah.
But to sexualize or teach about sexuality, you know, I mean, if I find out that's going on in my child's school, I'll be in the newspaper. That'll be the current event.
That'll be the current event. Yeah, it's like the Dare effect, you know, like.
Right.
Like
Drugs are really expensive.
Yeah, you know, I went to where I went to school, man. A lot of these kids being exposed, or, you know, being made aware of a lot of these drugs, wanted to try them.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, because curiosity as a child is one of the, you know, it could be a gift and a curse. So,
Right.
I think when you open a mind to certain different things, they might want to try it.
Right.
And then if you're showing that, oh, that's okay, you know, then that's where the issue lies for me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Bottom line, 2 men, 2 women can't make a child.
Right.
So
Right.
should be about building, and that, to me, that's not building. So
I agree. I don't know if it was you or if I heard it somewhere else, but someone said, man, woman, and woman is basically anti-life. So if you're not, if you're for that, then you're against life.
yeah.
So, you know, you got to think about that one.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that on a current event. This isn't a current event of mine, but I came across it in a reading. But I think it's AKA,
Okay.
the fraternity.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
they're banning homosexuals from being a part of their fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, you know, I think people taking a stand for things like this is important because, like I said, what are we teaching our children? You know what I mean?
Right. And I mean, again, we're not inciting gay bashing,
No.
inciting violence and things of that nature, but it is to solidify the importance of manhood and womanhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be specifically from this show, it has to specifically be directed to civilized and what we consider righteous people on the planet. I'm not so quick, or I will not allow myself to be sucked into what appears to be a trend in the news, a trend in society, and all these other trends that we see people following. The main thing is this: we're interested in prolonging, or better yet, continuing the legacy of producing children.
Strong, good readers.
Yeah, I mean that's straight up. I mean, I don't even know how to voice it in that way, but it's just I think we're in a constant barrage of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And all of you who have your own media, and you're interested in broadcasting these types of things over and over and over again, that's perfectly all right. Broadcast them on your mediums. But then when it begins to permeate into our schools, and then there's beginning to be a conversation about teaching this in a curriculum. Here's a news flash. There's no Black studies or Chicano studies or Asian studies curriculum.
That's what I was going to say.
So you're going to jump over those groups and say, we need a curriculum geared towards teaching our children about homosexuality. But how can you leap over the other disenfranchised group in American history?
Right.
I mean, come on. But that's my say-so on it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, God, and that's what I was actually going to say that. So it's funny that you brought that up. It's like, okay, they try to make that comparison that gay rights is a civil rights thing, which is not.
Can you repeat that last part?
Gay rights is a civil rights issue, which it's not.
Right.
And so then it's like, okay, so if you're going to try to draw that kind of equality, then why are you not fighting so hard, like the guy said, to have Black, African American studies in classes, right? Why are we not teaching so-called Latino history, Asian history, right? Why are all these other cultures being left out? If the struggle is the same, why are you not fighting for those things equally across the board? Why are you only pushing for one certain agenda?
Right, because even if you're accepted as a homosexual in white society, you would still be a Black homosexual. I don't care what anybody says. Right. Homosexuality does not trump the history and experience of Black people in this country. Even if you're brown or Hispanic or Latino or whatever you would like to refer to yourself as, your sexual orientation and preference does not trump what people see right away.
Exactly.
Yeah, because for one, it's a choice. At the end of the day, it's a choice. We don't have a choice on what so-called race we are.
Right.
So,
right. You can straighten your hair,
right,
your skin.
Right. If you're homosexual, really, when you go for a job interview, your sexual orientation shouldn't be even something that's voiced.
Right.
But as soon as you step into the office and you're Black, brown, they're gonna know, okay, right, he's Black or brown.
Right.
There's no hiding that.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, for those of you who are interested, I haven't had the opportunity to get the text, but my understanding is that civil rights activist Bayard Rustin, he wrote an autobiography about his experiences being a homosexual Black man in the civil rights movement and sort of that conflict that ensued. Of course, he didn't reveal that for fear of certain repercussions. However, the first motive in mind was to create a more equal society for Black people. That is something that people in the old days were really intent about.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like, okay, this is who I am, but I'm not being discriminated against because of my sexual orientation. I'm being discriminated against because of the color of my skin.
Right.
You know,
it's like, why does your sexual get down matter? Why do you need approval from others? Like, if you're gonna do what you do what you do.
Right.
right?
Why do you need approval? Like,
Exactly. And if what you're doing is right and exact, then you wouldn't need anyone's other approval. You know what I
Right.
mean? When's the last time you asked someone that if you could eat or if you could breathe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or if you can go get in your car, you know what I mean? Or if you can kiss your woman, or you know what I mean? Like, you don't need, when you're doing something that's right, you don't need permission to do it because it's what you're supposed to be doing anyway.
yeah. So at the end of the day, like I said, I'm not bashing homosexuals in any fashion, but I just think that when things become publicized, what are we teaching our children?
And it's very saturated.
Yes.
I mean,
everywhere you turn.
this news is
Sports.
coming up
Every
regularly, and I mean, we all know that we knowingly or unknowingly associate with homosexuals every single day. We already know that. I'm not on the homosexual hunt. It's a really old issue. So every time something comes up in the news, I'm like, so what? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, I really don't care. I
Right.
mean, but that is the reality.
Right.
Yeah.
True indeed. So why don't we go ahead and move into a break, and when we return, we're going to get at you with today's show. Peace.
Peace.
This is the thing. You got to tell Mr. Clark, like, dude, they use so many different sources on it.
That's right.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace to rule Allah.
Peace, Jaquel Allah.
And we're going to go ahead and get into our show. The first segment is titled Food. So just a couple of questions, and we're going to pass them around so we can all, share the questions with you. First question is, how does the information age tie into people lacking knowledge and wisdom? Number 2, how can we say we are an advanced civilization when we don't know how to grow our own food? Let me just pass it over to Jarul for the next couple of questions.
Yeah, so what are the benefits of raising live chickens? What are some, and I know this brother's going to really go in on that. This is D, what are some of the reasons gardening isn't a major subject taught in school?
I guess I'll take the last one. How can recycling be used to improve the savings and reserve funds for groceries?
Right, so I mean, when we planned this show, one of the things that we definitely agreed about is the fact that our people have basically been deceived about what food is, and we have addressed that in prior shows. But the main thing is that our approach to teaching our listeners about food is, first of all, you need food for thought. That would be what you study, what you see manifest in front of you, how you process it, and also how it affects you, but more importantly, how you apply whatever it is you see, hear, and all of that has a lot to do with your mentality. Now, when we talk about physical food and food choices, we do have to get into the idea of confusing labels on food. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is, what are some of the reasons why companies put confusing labels on food items? So why don't we just go ahead and just build on that for a moment. You want to kick it off, Jarul?
Yeah, when you think about what's not taught is it's not really taught in our society to critical think. So when we see something that may be confusing or something that's not, readily, commonly, knowable, we tend to just kind of say whatever and just eat it anyways or whatever and do it anyways. Exactly.
It's out on TV.
Right. You might smell it, look at it, and eat it. Right. So I think the foundation, especially today being knowledge and wisdom, is that, whatever you eat, like real knowledge is something that you can utilize to be a better person, to help people be better people. So I think for food, if you look at it like knowledge, it should be something that when you eat it, it actually benefits your body.
Right.
And a lot of these, confusing labels are made confusing because the ingredients aren't good for your body. Right. They damage and harm your body. So
like the wax on soup. There's ramen soups. Was it you who posted that, or someone posted it was basically coated with wax, so that's why those noodles never stick together, right? But so that wax will cause cancer in your belly. So people who are eating, soups every day, man.
College students. That's a college,
right.
College meal right there.
High school students. True indeed. I think one of the things about food labels, and also if you really pay attention, there are some places that you can go and a snack will be given to you, like on an airplane, and it won't have any ingredients listed on that package. Right. Mm-hmm. Yet you decide, peanuts, let me just eat the peanuts, and you really don't know what you're eating. Many of those names, dioxide and all these other types of huge words, they definitely have some effect on your body, which is a cell. So many of us, and that includes me, are really too lazy to do the research. There are some sites, and I'll give those to you before the show ends because we've given them before. But there are several sites out there on the internet you can log on, and you can actually type every single ingredient in whatever it is you eat or drink. So that would basically demystify some of the ingredients that you're seeing in your food.
Even without the site, man, everyone has a smartphone by now. Well, most of us have a smartphone by now.
Or standing next to someone. Right. He even has one.
Right. So that being said, whatever ingredient you don't recognize, just throw it in Google.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have an answer within, less than a couple seconds.
Right.
So.
And if Google says no results for this found, don't buy it.
Right, made up. Okay, well, this is the dye, and this is that stuff we put in it and put it together. Let's just call it this. Right. So, one of the things in terms of food labels is avoid anything that has, color or dye in it. Well, actually, color is dye. Basically, picture food coloring. That's used to make the product look blue or, cute for the children. Definitely avoid those types of things on food labels.
Yeah, no, I think the whole food label thing is just an interesting market. Remember back, was it last year, right, when we were doing the whole wanting to force people to label their foods properly, and everyone kind of punked out and was like, "Oh no, we're going to end up paying more money." Which other places in the world I've been doing it, they're not paying more money, right? And really, would you not want to pay that much more money to figure out what it is that you're eating? Like the guy said, I'm probably going to mess this quote up, but you either you pay for it now or you pay for it later.
Exactly. That's real.
So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Just take that moment and really examine what it is that you're eating, and if it's just beans, there shouldn't be a whole lot of other.
It's simple stuff.
It should just say beans.
Right.
So when they start adding extra stuff, you want to stay away from from those things. They put a lot of words to. Like I said, I've watched people because I also teach, and so energetics and martial arts. And so when you have the time to teach someone, you get to watch different things happen. One of the things you see happen is when someone doesn't get it and they hit a roadblock, they shut down. Right? So you can watch people look at stuff and then just get overwhelmed. And walk into a grocery store is an overwhelming experience.
Exactly.
It is.
Right? I mean, and then, forbid if you walk into a different grocery store where you're used to going to aisle number 7, now you've got to try to go to aisle number 17 and walk through all that, and now everything's in a discombobulating place. Yeah, things get confusing, and then the light coloring just makes you kind of antsy, and you're like, I don't care what it says, just put it in the basket and get the hell out of here. Right. So I would say, there's a lot of things that go into not just the label, but also where it's at,
Yeah, I think, when you think about knowledge, wisdom, man, that's taking your life in your own hands. It's not like, for example, you think about, okay, you can ignore the toxins in foods now, but chances are it's going to catch up to you later. And then when it catches up to you later, it's no longer in your hands. You have to go to some specialist who's probably going to give you more toxins to try to treat the toxins that were already in you in the first place. So
that's if your insurance works when you walk into the doctor.
Right. So it's a vicious cycle. So like I said, and like I always try to tell my clients is that take your life in your hands now.
Right.
Don't wait or live by chance and think that I might not get sick. Take the steps now so you don't get sick. Right. So then along the line you won't, and you'll be good.
Right. Or the whole thing. My grandma smoked cigarettes a pack a day and had bacon juice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and she lived to be 92. Okay, well, your grandma probably also didn't get vaccinated.
Right.
The place that she was living was a little cleaner, so there was other things that
probably more active.
Right, exactly. She wasn't at home underneath her TV or her computer. You know what I'm saying? Facebook all damn day. Right. She was out being active. So yeah, she might have been able to get away with that.
Right.
That being said, you are not your grandma, right? Or your uncle or your father, right? You are yourself, and so your body's going to respond differently to other things. And like the guy was saying, just take your life into your own hands and take that extra, step to make sure that what you're ingesting is really going to be the best thing to ingest for you.
True indeed. So now, why don't we get into some of the solutions, in terms of dealing with food labels or confusing or misleading food labels.
Before we go
Go
there,
ahead.
what would y'all consider if we're not looking at food per se as the food we eat, but more on the lines of good food for your mind?
Hmm.
What would be the best approach to I guess determining the right foods
For
for the
your
mind?
mind?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Mhm.
I think, and I kind of had this conversation at the rest at home. Um, you really got to think about the things that you watch and how that entertains you, right? So if you're watching a bunch of people getting their head bashed in, and you just find that most exhilarating, or this ridiculousness, right, where people falling off of things and getting kicked in the face or whatever, you know what I mean, and that entertains you, then you got to look at your character, who you are as a person, right? So
Right.
maybe your brain has already got some kind of, we're going to use the analogy of food, your brain already has some kind of food poisoning
Mm.
in it, right? Because you're already kind of looking at things in a slanted point of view.
Mhm.
Now, granted, I'm a martial artist, and so when we're training, we punch people and they get hurt, we kind of laugh a little bit. We're not laughing if someone gets broken arms, but at some points, it's definitely better to laugh than it is to cry.
Right.
At least in a room full of men, right? You get hit in the stomach and it hurts you, cry on the inside. What did Eddie Murphy say? Karate man cry on the inside.
Right.
They don't cry on the outside. But and that's what I think it is. It's your mental state, right? Not that sometimes violence is not cool to watch, right? But even as violent as that is, sometimes too much violence is too much. There's definitely a
Right.
limit. So what's your mind state, and what kind of things I think do you gravitate and enjoy will dictate or will show you the present state that your mind is already in.
So it's kind of like how they say in America you have people who are obese but they're malnourished.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those
Yeah.
things where you've never really got the nutrients or the right mental foundation.
Mhm.
Right.
So you keep going for more and more of the wrong foods.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Right.
What did Neo say? He was like, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And dude was like, "Man, you never used them before."
Mm.
Right. I think for the most part, when we're talking about food choices, much of what I see is anything that makes you sluggish after you eat it. More than likely, you ate too much of it, or it didn't have a really good percentage of the right vitamins. For me, I try to limit my meals to one meal a day. I might eat a snack sometime at some point in the day, but for the most part, I always tend to lead my life like I only eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Most people, they tend to eat because it tastes good. Ooh, I want some ice cream, so they go eat some ice cream, or
My
ooh,
favorite
I
show
want a
is
steak.
on. I
Right.
gotta
Yeah.
have something to eat while I watch my favorite TV
Right.
show.
So then, it's all these cravings that we give into. We did a show about addiction. So, each time you pick up something to eat, um, try to associate it with a particular activity that you're doing, which makes you do this. And do you really need to eat that item? But more importantly, in terms of the mental food that we're talking about, whatever you expose yourself to, you're being fed it, whether you like it or not. That's why they call them news feeds. Each time that information comes out and you watch it and you buy into it, and you take that home and say, this is true. You've been fed quite possibly some misinformation, which is why you have to make some really good food choices in terms of your information. We use stuff from U.S. News, CNN, Fox News. We use everything. We pick and choose what we want to present to you, our viewers. However, it's your job to look at those things on your own and decipher what's truth, what's fallacy, and
Yeah.
what's a total lie.
No, you know what? And one thing that I was kind of drawing from what you were building on, I think, is laziness, right? And so that happens both in mental food and physical food. A lot of times people will want to watch like earlier, we were talking about Tyler Perry movies and just the senseless, kind of stupid humor it is, right? It's not so intellectual. And then when you look at a lot of other things on TV, right, the level of humor. I mean, my daughter's like 7 years old, so she can walk in and catch the humor on the show that's supposed to be for adults. Now, granted, my child is pretty intelligent. Right. She shouldn't be intelligent enough to figure out humor that an adult,
wow.
Right? I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
And so, you got to think, how motivated are you to get the right foods, right? Some people say, "Oh, I don't want to drive an extra 5 blocks or whatever to go to this farmer's market when I can just go to this corner store and pick up some white bread and bologna." Right? It's like, okay, well, why don't you just take the extra moment and drive down to the farmer market or drive down to at least a real grocery store and pick up some food, right? And then when you're in the grocery store, would you take the time to look at which groceries? I think you're going to build about how to pick out the fruits, right? And
well,
on the fruits and stuff like that.
Real grocery store is an interesting statement in itself.
Go there, Rob.
You can smell them too. You can smell when you're in a real grocery store, man.
Yeah. I just think that when you approach knowledge in any capacity, or food in any capacity, whether it's mental or physical, you got to think about what are you approaching it for? Like, what are you trying to get out of it? And it should be something beneficial. If there's no benefit to it, then leave it alone.
I agree with you, definitely.
So I try to keep.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, like I said, when you approach knowledge of food, physical, mental food, take the approach of if it isn't good for you, leave it alone. If
that's another T-shirt right there.
True indeed. Thank you for that. I know one of the things is we all have some experience either with other family members or in our own household. So I wanted to present one of the solutions that we wanted to present to you in terms of food. Even though the season has changed, it's kind of cold, but spring is approaching. If you think like the ant, you prepare in advance. So for the most part, we wanted to share just some ideas about approaching growing produce in your house or in your backyard. And the reason why we wanted to share kind of 2 ideas is first of all, I know there's a sister by the name of Beautiful Ciasia, and I kind of stumbled on one of her videos where she's actually talking about how you grow produce in your house. So for those of us who are urbanites, you don't have a backyard or you don't live anywhere near any dirt, there are some ways you can do that, and it led me to this. All of you are, hopefully you're familiar with not necessarily shoe racks they call them, but
the cloth shoe cubby
that you hang on the door.
Yeah.
Right. So if maybe you look up any type of reasonably priced store, your Targets out there. Avoid Walmart, but you can check Target. I mean, I hate Walmart, dude.
No, did you hear what happened on a side note? Yeah. Walmart just got in trouble for selling, fox meat as some other kind of meat or something, and then they had to pull it out in China. Yeah, dudes are on some
sounds like another show. We on you. So in any case, straight up, we on you. You got your underground compound. The truth is still on. How you can grow produce in that manner, and you can just keep that in your house.